If you have walked the valley, sailed through a troubled sea, if you have been alone with no one to help you in your need, if you have called on Jesus, reached up to touch his hand, if you have known his healing touch, you will surely understand. There is no pit so deep that he is not deeper still. There is no emptiness. If you are in the valley, sailing a troubled sea, if you are all alone with no one to help you in your need, reach up and call on Jesus. He will reach down to you. When you have known his healing touch, you will know that this is true. There is no pit so deep that he is not deeper still. There is no emptiness too great for him to fill. And there is no life so lost that Jesus cannot restore. There is no one beyond the reach of the love of our living Lord. He does impossible things. Each heart that knows him sings. There is no pit so deep that he is not deeper still. There is no emptiness too great for him to fill. And there is no life so lost that Jesus cannot restore. There is no one beyond the reach of the love of our living Lord. There is no one beyond the reach of the love of our living Lord.
Good evening. Nice to stand here in front of you again and to share with you. Travis, where is he? No, I asked him to turn off the light here. Oh, what about this? I want the map not to shine, if it's possible. Impossible? Okay. Yes? Friends, every story about a birth of a nation that you know in modern times went through difficulties and obstacles and problems and civil war. I don't need to share with you the story of the birth of America, how the North was fighting the South and civil war. Every story about the birth of a nation, any nation, didn't go very smoothly, including our story. So tonight I'm going to share with you the story of the rebirth of the modern state of Israel, or the story of, the birth of the Jewish people to become a free nation living in their own land. Our story is quite unique, quite unique. And there are several facts that are making our story of becoming a free, independent nation very unique story. Number one, we had to wait 2,000 years to become a free nation. No other nation on earth had to wait 2,000 years, to get their independence. And so our clock was ticking during 2,000 years. If you remember, where did I stop my morning message? With the fall of Masada. You remember? When we stopped being an independent nation in our land, and the year was 74 AD. So literally almost 2,000 years, till 1948. The second fact that is making our personal story more unique will be the so many difficulties that our birth had to go through, such as the Holocaust. And no other nation on earth, 1/3 of the nation was exterminated, as happened to the Jewish people. So tonight, this will be my message. As you can see, it says there, from Zionism to present. If somebody will ask you, when was Israel becoming a free, independent nation state, you will all answer 1948. I would like to early this with at least 60 years. So tonight the story is going to begin 60 years earlier, in the early 80s of the 19th century. Where are the Jewish people at that time? Worldwide. Where do they live? So few in the land of Israel. The vast majority are scattered, spread worldwide, with most of them in Europe, and of course some of them in America and Russia and Australia and South Africa, but the vast majority of the Jews are in Europe. Before I start, again on the map here, I just want to emphasize, this is the map of Israel, modern Israel. But Israel, during the birth in 1948, was not as complete as Israel is today. There were several parts of Israel that were torn from our heart, okay? And we had to start our story without having them. And they will become under Israel's control only years later. Which places? This one here, named Golan Heights. The Golan Heights was not part of Israel in 1948. And 25% of the country didn't belong to Israel in 1948, and it is located in the heart of Israel, in the center, near Tel Aviv. All the area over here was not part of Israel, What's the name of that area? In biblical terminology, you will call it Samaria and Judea. In modern days terminology, it will be known as the West Bank. The West Bank. You hear, a lot about the West Bank. So Israel was much smaller country in 1948. Not mentioning, the Gaza Strip, which was not part of it. So after knowing that, let's begin the story of modern Israel. Oh. The word Zionist is coming from the word Zion. I don't need to tell you that the word Zion is another name of Israel, or even of Jerusalem, Mount Zion, in Jerusalem. The father of this modern movement, the founder, his name is Theodor Herzl. And Theodor Herzl initiated in the early 80s of the 19th century a plan. And what was his dream? What was his plan? To connect between the people that are scattered with their homeland. Remember, when he first came, only few Jews have lived here. Most of them are far away from their homeland. No wonder why he is known as the founder of the Zionist movement. I'm not going to share with you the whole story, the long story of Theodor Herzl. I will just tell you that he was a journalist in Europe. He lived in Vienna, Austria, in Europe, and he was working for a German paper. As a journalist, he was sent in the year 1895 to the city of Paris. A journalist was sent to the city of Paris. Why? Because they were having a trial in Paris, of blaming a man named Alfred Dreyfus, you can see him, of high treason, being a traitor. Captain Dreyfus is an officer in the French army, and he was accused for selling secrets to Germany. Again, I don't have the time to open up the whole story of the Dreyfus affair. I can tell you that in the French army, the high-level commanders knew very well from the very beginning who is the traitor. But they protected him because he was one of them. And they put all the blame on the shoulders of Dreyfus because of the reason that he was a Jew. And Steve mentioned several times the word anti-Semitism. That's a pure case of anti-Semitism. Because he is Jewish, they put all the blame on him. He lost everything, sent to the Devil Island in a prison for several years till the truth came up, and finally he will be acquitted, but he lost everything. Herzl, the journalist, was shocked from what his eyes saw. When he came back home, he released a pamphlet named The Jewish State. So you can summarize Herzl's dream with that verse: there is a land without a people. There is a land without a people. Why without? Because where are most of the Jewish people in those days? In Europe. And the people without a land, The people without a land should return to the land without a people. So said Theodor Herzl. Later on, being the founder of the Zionist movement, he stood in front of the delegates and took that oath that you all know from Psalm 137. The First World War started in 1914. And during the next 4 years, the Turkish Empire is going to collapse. At the end of the First World War, Great Britain will defeat the Turks. Why am I mentioning the Turkish Empire? Because up until the end of the First World War, they controlled not only Turkey, they controlled the Middle East, including the land of Israel. So now they are gone. And Great Britain is now controlling the land of Israel. And in England, they have a prime minister, Lloyd George, who is a true Christian, a true believer, who knew the Bible very well. And being so, he knew what he should do. So he released that letter, which is known by us as the Balfour Declaration. And Balfour was a minister in his government. Okay, and I'm going to quote only a few words. His Majesty government view with favor the establishment in Palestine. Unfortunately, the word Palestine was used by the British regarding the land of Israel. And of course, we don't use the term Palestine. Sorry. Of the nation, I will say it again. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a nation home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object. Wow. What I'm doing with you is counting the milestones, on the journey to become a free nation living in our land. Not yet, but soon it will happen. So now we have friends standing with us. I'm talking about Great Britain, supporting the dream of Herzl and releasing that statement, okay, which will open the road for Jewish people to come to the land. Unfortunately, that approach is going to change soon in 1935. By then, Jews started to move to the land of Israel, mainly from Eastern Europe. And the British kept their route open for those Jewish people. And what will happen in 1935? The government now in London, which is responsible, of the land of Israel, it's called the British Mandate, will change their approach. They will close the gates. They will block the route for Jewish people to come to the land of Israel. They will go all the way to the other end of the scale. From being pro before, they are now anti. And that approach will last till they left the land of Israel, and this will only happen in 1948. So between 1935 and 1948, a different approach. And why did they took a different approach. If you're asking, they wanted the Arabs to be their allies. Few years later, 1939, September 1st, 1939. What happened? The Second World War broke. How many Jews have lived worldwide when the Second World War began? 18 million. With more than 12 million in Europe. Few hundreds of thousands are in the land of Israel. Listen carefully to the way that I speak. I'm saying the land of Israel. I'm not saying the state of Israel. There is no state yet. Are you with me? And of course, there are a few millions already in America, but most of the Jews are in Europe. And what will happen during the Second World War? 1/3 of the Jewish people will be exterminated. I don't need to tell you what the Nazi Germans have done during the Holocaust time, the darkest chapter in the history of mankind. Even my personal story of my father, okay? His father was one of 9 siblings. 8 were killed. So my father with his father and with my father's sister are the only 3 left from the family. Survived during the Holocaust. He was in Auschwitz, Birkenau. And then the war came to an end in 1945. How many people will be in the land of Israel in 1945, if you're asking? Almost 600,000 Jews, sorry, and the same number of Arabs living here. The British are still controlling the land of Israel, and they are still holding the same approach of being anti-Zionism. Like gates are closed. If Jewish people wanted to come to Israel at that time, to the land of Israel, they had to do it in secret ways, under the eyes of the British forces. But then, more and more clashes began between Jews and Arabs in this land. And the UN wanted to find a solution to stop those clashes. So they sent a committee to investigate the reason, and that committee went back to the headquarters of the UN, recommended them to vote for a plan which you can see the name. It's called the Plan of Partition. Now, when you look at the map here, and when you look at the map here, it's the same land, but different borders. Okay? The UN decided to resolve the problems between Jews and Arabs in the land of Israel by dividing the land and creating 2 states. One will go to the Jewish people, one will go to the Arab people. So that color will be the Jewish state, that color will be the Arab state, and they decided that Jerusalem will be an international jurisdiction, like the Vatican. This was the plan that they are going to vote for on the night of November 29th, 1947, not far from here, New York. And nations raised their hands, and 33 voted in favor. Like most of the nations voted in favor and less against, so the resolution was adopted. What a generosity came from the UN towards the Jewish state. Thank you, UN, for giving us the desert where we are going to build our state here in the barren desert. And they gave the fertile land to the Arabs. Despite of this, we were happy to get this. Why? Because as a nation waiting 2,000 years to get that recognition, believe me, you will say thank you even if you will get a desert. And the Arabs rejected the plan. The next day, the War of Independence began. The War of Independence was known up until 2 years ago to be the longest war that Israel ever was involved, in. 1.5 years. The current events that we are having in Israel have changed many of the, statements that we used to say about our modern history. And I will be more precise on that tomorrow night. So the War of Independence lasted 1.5 years. It started as a guerrilla war between, Jews and Arabs. And this was the state of the war till May 14, 1948. And what happened on May 14, 1948? Our first Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, you've heard, you know the name, proclaimed the independence of the State of Israel. The ceremony took place in Tel Aviv, lasted 27 minutes, and praise God, Israel is now a free nation, a free independent nation living in the land of Israel. And from that moment, we got a state. The state of Israel was born on Friday, 4 p.m., May 14, 1948, 27 minutes of a ceremony. The news were brought outside, thousands of people in the streets of Tel Aviv. And what will they do when they got the beautiful news? They will dance. Everybody was dancing in the streets of Tel Aviv. As they dance, Egyptian planes attacked Tel Aviv and dropped bombs over the heads of the people dancing in the streets. The next day, 2 things happened. May 15, 1948. Number one, the British forces left Israel. No more British mandate. Number two, 5 Arab countries attacked the baby that was born the day before. How many people do we have in 1948? 600,000. Do I need to tell you that Egypt, 100 million? And if I will count Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and I will add Iraq, 5 Arab countries went against the baby. The baby defeated all the 5. Amen. All the 5. No wonder why some people will say the rebirth of the State of Israel is a modern day miracle. those 600,000 defeated all the 5 armies that invaded. The price was very heavy. 1% lost their lives, 6,000. At the end of the war, the map of Israel will be a different map. There you can see what the UN was planning for Israel to be. Here you can see that Israel is much more complete country. Of course, what is missing at that time from being more complete is the West Bank area, and there is no Golan Heights here. So this is Israel at the end of the War of Independence. And then there are no more obstacles for Jewish people to take their way to Israel and to join those that are in Israel. If I will quote from Zechariah chapter 8, thus says the Lord of hosts, behold, I will save my people from the east country and from the west country, and I will bring them, and they shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. And they shall be my people, and I will be their God in truth and righteousness. We have a parliament. You know, the authorities were built. We have a government, parliament, and what is the job of the parliament members? To legislate. They are legislating laws. In Israel, unfortunately, we are missing what you guys have in America. It's called constitution. We don't have a constitution. So it's all based on legislating laws in Israel. Do you know what's the first law that was legislated in the Israeli parliament in 1949? It's called the right of return. What is the meaning of the right of return? The meaning of the right of return is exactly what you read in Zechariah chapter 8. The meaning of the right of return is telling the Jewish people in the diaspora outside Israel, come, be part of the miracle. Come, join us. Israel is the only country in the whole world when a Jewish person will decide to move to Israel and to become a citizen of Israel. Upon touching the ground of Israel, that person will receive the citizenship. No wait. They don't wait. Okay, nobody is testing you. Once you prove your Jewish record, your way to Israel is open and you can be a citizen of Israel. I told you, it's very unique, our story. And a lot of people came, Holocaust survivors, including my father and his father and my father's sister. And many others came. And what did they do during the 50s and the 60s? They built Israel. They developed Israel. And they actually turned the barren land to become a beautiful land, flourishing with milk and honey. And they did this despite of all the obstacles and the problems and the difficulties that they had. The 60s are known as terrible years for us in Israel. For most of the people around the world, the expression 60s will be the Beatles, but not for us. When we say 60s, our thoughts are immediately with those who lived near the borders, because we knew through which level of suffering they went through, because they were targeted by Syrian soldiers who were on the Golan Heights, shooting them day and night. Same thing from Egypt and Jordan. I don't know how many of you have heard the name Eli Cohen, or as he's known as the Israeli spy. We didn't have the Golan Heights yet under our control, but we were suffering a lot from shootings that came from the Syrian bunkers built along the Golan Heights when the Syrian soldiers were above us. So the Israeli intelligence decided to launch a spy into Syria. And they chose him because he knew Arabic very well. It was his mother tongue. He's Jewish, from Iraq. He couldn't enter to Syria. Hello, I'm an Israeli spy. I came to espionage. So he was sent to Argentina, where he built up a new identity as a businessman, came to Syria, and became very, very quickly a friend with the regime, the Syrian regime, and therefore with the Syrian generals. And they saw him as if he is their friend. And one day, and it's a true story, it was summertime, and it's very hot in our region during summertime. Syrian soldiers decided to come to see, Syrian generals, decided to come and to see how their soldiers are doing in those bunkers, concrete bunkers in the Golan Heights. And they invited Eli Cohen to join the trip, the visit, because they thought that he is their friend. And when he saw how miserable are the Syrian soldiers because they were in those underground bunkers, he set up a trap. He came with a plan. He was able to convince the Syrian generals to plant trees above these bunkers to provide shade to the Syrian soldiers. They didn't know what they are doing. They thought that they are providing shade, but they swallowed the bite. And 2 years later, in 1965, they intercepted him in Damascus when he was sitting on the radio, sending messages to Israel. They arrested him, hanged him, and buried him. Nobody knows where exactly in Damascus. Nowadays, it's been exactly 60 years since they captured him. Tomorrow, when I will talk about our region currently, I will also mention the fact that Syria collapsed. The Syrian regime collapsed. And because of this chaos, Israeli troops are now in Syria. In Syria. A week ago, the Israeli Mossad, which is the equivalent to the CIA, visited secret places in Syria. They came back to Israel with 2,500 items, personal items that belong to Eli Cohen. Eli Cohen's wife is alive. She lives in Israel. We don't have his body yet, but we have thousands of his personal items brought to Israel. These news were released in Israel 2 days ago about him. So he was executed. He was hanged and died, but his plan continued to survive, to exist. And 2 years later, after he was killed, another war broke. And I'm talking about the 6-Day War, 1967. Why is it called 6-Day War? How many days lasted the 6-Day War? How many days? 6 days, of course. We conquered the Golan Heights within 2 days. We broke the Syrian front line, threatening us within 2 hours. How could we do this so quickly? Thanks to Eli Cohen. Because those trees that became higher stood above each and every Syrian bunker. So for our pilots, those bunkers were clear targets and they knew how they should go against them. Within 2 hours, the Syrian army collapsed. What a great person, what a great story. Our men in Damascus. Look at the map of Israel after the 6-Day War and compare, this is after the 6-Day War, compare it to the map of Israel in 1948. Which Israel is bigger, this one or this one? Of course, this one. Having Sinai and the West Bank and the Golan Heights, wow, now Israel is so big. This is the map of Israel till 1978 or 79. But if I will return 6 years before, another war broke. And it was October 6, 1973, when Israel was attacked from the north by the Syrian army and from the south by the Egyptian army. It was a surprise attack that they launched against Israel, and it is known as the Yom Kippur War. I don't have the time to lecture about the meaning of the Day of Atonement, which is Yom Kippur. I was a soldier at that time. I was 19 years old at that time. In Israel, when you turn to 18, you have to serve in the military. It's mandatory for men and women. Men will do 3 years of a military service and women will do 2 years. It's mandatory, compulsory service. So I was 8 months already in the army. And I was stationed here on the Suez Canal, up here in the northern part. And I saw the war from the very beginning. That war surprised us. Why? Because the Day of Atonement is the most holy day that Jewish people have. Nothing is moving in Israel on the Day of Atonement. Everything is shut down. When I say everything, I mean everything shuts down. No cars. You can literally walk in the middle of a highway, no car will hit you. Everything shuts down. There's no radio, there's no TV. Nothing. It is so quiet on the Day of Atonement, even the flies don't fly. Most Israeli Jewish people will be in synagogues praying. And this is why Syria and Egypt choose that day to go against us, because they knew that they will find us not ready for them. And they succeeded, at least at the beginning. The first 3 days of the war, okay, This, what you're going to hear from me as a statement, okay, was a right statement, a true statement, till 2 years ago. Up until 2 years ago, I said, each time when I was talking about the Yom Kippur War, I said about the first 3 days of the war being the most terrible days that Israel ever went through. It's no longer valid, because October 7 of 2023 will be worse than that, those days. So I cannot say it anymore. When you will hear me speaking tomorrow about the war which is going on in Israel, I will then say, since the Holocaust and what happened to the Jewish people when 1/3 of the Jews was exterminated, there was never a pogrom against Jews that took so many lives as October 7, 2023. Going back to the Yom Kippur War, those 3 days, the beginning of the war, terrible. And so few are standing against the armies here and here against so many. I brought some pictures of the Valley of Tears up in the Golan Heights, which is the battlefield between Israel and Syria. So Israeli soldiers are here, Syria is attacking. On our side, 120 tanks. That's all. Syria is now coming, the Syrian army, with 1,000 tanks. That's the story of the Yom Kippur War. How so few got attacked by so many. And those young boys, my age, you know, more or less, were so brave. Holding up, standing against the evil that came, you know, from the other side of the border. And those few were able to fight back 3.5 days, and they stopped the Syrian army. The few stopped the many. It rings the bell as if I'm talking about David and Goliath. And what happened after 3 days? Finally, the reserve army arrived, which is a very large army in the Israeli military. This was a change in the war, which is leading, after a few more days, to a great victory. Of course, with too many casualties on our side. So the entire Yom Kippur War lasted 18 days, and that war came to an end with us defeating the Syrian army up in the north and the Egyptian army down in the south. And 6 more years till the president of Egypt, Sadat, will land in Israel, go to Jerusalem, speak in the Israeli Knesset, and a short time later, the first peace treaty was signed up between Israel and Egypt, and I'm talking about Egypt being an Arab country. If I will just go with this momentum, I will also mention that in 1993, another peace treaty will be achieved, and I'm talking about Jordan. And if I will go with this momentum, I will then say that only a few years ago, Israel signed peace treaty with more Arab countries like the Emirates, and it is known as the Abraham Accord. So despite of all these wars and problems and obstacles and difficulties, we didn't stop for a moment to continue building and developing our country. Building roads, putting pipes to irrigate the desert, planting orchards and crops, and crops and vegetables and polishing diamonds, building up universities, developing science in Israel, medicine, tourism, you name it. Modern Israel is a very, very developed, computerized country. Despite of all these problems, as if I'm telling you, one hand is defending the land, while the other hand is building up and continue to develop. I want to take the story a little bit outside and around. And it will be a good way to prepare the ground for tomorrow's presentation. To do this, I want to pull back in time the clock to the early 70s. And it was September 1970 when in Jordan, yes, King Hussein of Jordan decided to put an end to terror organizations who settled down in Jordan. At that time, they were called the PLO. PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization. Who was their leader? You know his name, Yasser Arafat. So King Hussein declared a war against them and pushed them out. And they had no other choice but to leave Jordan. And they choose to go up to Syria, through Syria, all the way to that part, southern Lebanon. They couldn't stop in Syria because the Syrian regime is strong, like the regime in Jordan. They cannot resist a strong regime. They were looking for the only regime in the Middle East which is weak and not strong, because they knew that going to a country with a weak regime, they will be able to settle down there and to build up their capabilities. And they choose Lebanon, which is a very, very weak country. And from southern Lebanon, they started to bother us. Here you can see the northern border of Israel. This is Israel, this is southern Lebanon. As from 1974, we didn't have even a day of rest. Every day there were multiple terror attacks that came from that side, launched by the PLO. So we had to stop them. It took us few years to, hold up ourselves, and then we had to launch a military campaign against those terrorists. And in 1982, Israel's army invaded to Lebanon and pushed them out. And Yasser Arafat left Lebanon with his friends, and they moved to where? Tunisia and Algeria in North Africa. And Israel kept a security belt in southern Lebanon to protect the land of Israel from those terrorists during the next 18 years. In the year 2000, Israel's army was pulled back. According to Israel's decision, the government decided to pull back the Israeli army. And we thought that this would bring quiet to the region. And the fact is that we had 6 years of quiet. Between 2000 and 2006, 6 years of quiet. And what happened in 2006? A new power that rose in southern Lebanon became strong enough to start bothering Israel. And that new power is called Hezbollah. You've heard the name Hezbollah. Unlike the PLO, which is based on Arabs who are Sunnis, Hezbollah is based on Arabs who are Shiite. That's a big split in the Muslim world. Do you know who is the mother of all Shiite Muslims in the world? Iran. We hear a lot about Iran in the news. So Iran's plan was to build a Shiite belt around Israel, going all the way from Lebanon through Syria, all the way down, in order to, when they will decide to go against Israel. It was a big plan of Iran. And therefore, their proxies, like the Hezbollah, were armed by them by smuggling a lot of weapons to their hands. The leader of the Hezbollah, his name is Nasrallah. You can see him standing here. Hezbollah says it has doubled its arsenal of guided missiles aimed at Israel. This was a real threat against Israel up in the north. Tomorrow, when I will speak about current events in Israel, I will mention that the leader of the Hezbollah is no longer with us. He's gone. When we dropped several bombs in Beirut, in his bunker, and he was killed in his bunker. If you want to know who represents Satan, the evil, look at his face. Look at his face. What I was trying to do tonight is to share with you the story of Israel's birth as an, independent, free nation, to count the obstacles along the way, to highlight the major events on the way to be a free, independent state, to show you how one hand is building while the other hand is defending. By the way, this didn't stop till today. Same hand is defending. We failed. When did we fail? Recently, on October 7, 2023, but I will be more precise on that tomorrow. Okay? While the other hand continued to build. And then to describe the threats that we had to deal with around Israel. President Trump became a president, a few years ago. He was elected in his first term. And then he came with two statements that he made. One statement, and we were so grateful in Israel after he made that statement, when he said, under his watch, the U.S. policy regarding the Golan Heights will be that it will be under Israel's sovereignty. The meaning of that is that he is the first leader ever that came with such a statement that the Golan Heights will be part of Israel. And we were so grateful. So our Prime Minister Netanyahu decided to gesture him by building a community that will be called Trump Heights up on the Golan Heights. The other statement that he came with, President Trump, was about Jerusalem and how can you emphasize that the fact that Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel? By moving your embassy. Unfortunately, in Israel, most of the embassies of foreign nations are in Tel Aviv and not in Jerusalem. A lot of nations still see Jerusalem as a city under dispute. So the American embassy was moved to Jerusalem, and as from that time, groups that are visiting Israel will include also the American embassy in Jerusalem to be one of their, visiting sites. As you can see, Steve standing there with one of his groups, taking a group picture. And this is why we are so grateful to President Trump. And we are saying that, the man not only came with statements, promises, he fulfilled them. I would like to end up this evening story with a song. Don't worry, I'm not going to be the singer. I'm a lousy, I don't know to sing. So instead of me singing, I decided to bring up to you here, to this church, bunch of young Israelis called the Scouts, the Scouts. And they will perform something nice to you. And this will be also my way to say thank you for listening, for being here tonight, and for being a nice audience. I hope that I was able to contribute to your understanding about modern day Israel, the birth of modern Israel. And it will be like a free invitation sent from the Scouts in Israel to you by asking you to come and to visit Israel.